without these great, powerful allies in life, you really can't do anything. I have so many great books that I'm humbled by when I read them. One of them was The Courage to Be Disliked. There's a simple quote in there I love. All problems are interpersonal problems. And so if you face any challenge in life, anything, I guarantee you, most of the time, if not all the time, you don't have the solution by yourself. It's going to require a thought, an idea, a collaboration, or a partnership with someone to move through that challenge. Yeah, so Ryan, it was funny. We were just talking about the wonders of technology today compared to the way they were not even that long ago. I was just sharing with you. I got a piece of the glass from the World Trade Center right here, actually, because I was in New York during 9/11, and even back then, not that long ago, people often ask me, how did you deal with that? Like logistically, not just deal with watching 8 people jump from the North Tower before the South Tower was even hit, because my office was like 5 blocks away. But we didn't even have cell phones on my squad. We still had beepers. And so just communication, can you imagine, getting leads and trying to conduct interviews and do things with people, prior to even the technology to be able to communicate effectively?
Yeah, well, I even think about it on a micro level with my kids. If they my older kids, anyways, my 2 oldest have cell phones, and I'm thinking, well, I want them to check in. I want them to tell me what's going on, where they're at, what time they're going to be home. And then I thought, as I was a kid, I didn't have any of that. My mom would call around the neighborhood or call houses or call my friends' houses and say, hey, is Ryan over there? And I just knew to be home by dark. So it is interesting, but we also live in different times too.
Yeah. But the need for that connection, it's a nice bridge, the need for the connection is still there. So my son went to the Naval Academy, I went to the Naval Academy. Just even the way, and my son's a Marine Corps officer right now, and just the way they pass information now compared to what it was like when I was in the Marine Corps. We used to, when we were standing duty, or what was called mate of the deck, we would get a phone call on a hardwired phone, and look at me doing this, write it down on a piece of paper.
At least you're not doing this.
Yeah, right. Oh, yeah. And then rolling down windows like this.
That's right.
We'd write it down on a sticky note or a piece of paper and then hand walk it to someone's room, leave it on their desk, and hope that someone got it and could get the message that they needed. We had a chalkboard we'd write messages on for the entire company. So all these things is how we dealt with it. It was interesting.
Yeah, and I think the tools that we have are only as good as our capability in using them. I see so many people, for example, bag on social media, and I've done it too, and it has its fair share of critique and criticism, but also you and I wouldn't be having this conversation. People wouldn't be listening to this podcast without the power of social media. So it's interesting when people complain about something they use so frequently and has made their lives that much better.
Yeah, I'm not a big believer in bashing anything. Everything in life is just another tool, and can you keep balance between the tool and what the actual need of the tool is? And again, with us as a human being and human species, we require deep-rooted connections, and the best connections we have that give us the things that we value, that we can resonate with, is human contact. I mean, we're not going to undo hundreds of thousands of years of evolution in a small time span of time, saying that, hey, technology can replace all that or give us just as much, with that connectivity. No, it can't. It can be a small Band-Aid, but Band-Aids fall off, and so we still need that power of human touch and connection.
Why do you think it is that so many people struggle with making those connections? Because that's one thing I found. I used to struggle with this personally, but it just was because I didn't put myself out there and didn't feel like it was important. But when I started in my financial planning career, I realized I need a network. I need to ask for referrals. Yeah. I need to be a likable person, a credible person, so I can build out a network and build my business. And that translated over to what we're doing now. So I haven't struggled for a long time with this. I realize the importance, but I think a lot of men in particular really do struggle with making powerful strategic connections.
Yeah, it's a great question that a lot of people don't ask, especially men don't ask. We are hard-pressed, and I know you've covered this on your show before, we are hard-pressed as men to have the humility to say we need help, or the hard-pressed to have the humility to say we need someone else in our life or an ally in our life, because we are so coded to want to provide, to be of service to others, that we oftentimes don't know that in order to be of service to others, we need to have connections with others. We need, and powerful connections. I'm what's considered a first generational professional. I just learned this term the other day. I always just thought because of how I grew up having to heat my house all by wood that I was just gritty, resilient, and self-reliant because my parents didn't have any money. And that's part of it. But also part of it was I didn't have teachers, mentors, and guides in my life showing me the path to get in the Naval Academy, to be a productive Marine Corps officer, to be a productive professional in a professional work environment that was so far out of the norm for what my family was. I just didn't come from a blue-collar family. Blue-collar was elevated for my family. I'm not just first generation to go to college. My grandparents didn't even graduate from high school on either side. So it was like really, really hard pressed where I grew up. But it all came down to the fact that I was able to do these things and move into running the behavioral analysis program for the FBI and write books and all these things because I had people, thank God, inserted themselves into my life and became those trusted allies, became those people that I had relationships with, that became part of the whole, that I started realizing much later in life, to my own chagrin, was that without these great, powerful allies in life, you really can't do anything. I have so many great books that I'm humbled by when I read them. One of them was The Courage to be Disliked. And the great thing about that book, there's a simple quote in there I love. All problems are interpersonal problems. And so if you face any challenge in life, anything, I guarantee you, most of the time, if not all the time, you don't have the solution by yourself. It's going to require a thought, an idea, a collaboration, or a partnership with someone to move through that challenge. I don't even call things problems. There are no problems. There's just challenges. Every day is faced with challenges. And so when you can move through that challenge, it only happens with a great, healthy relationship. So that really emphasizes the power and importance of us as a species, because again, we would not have come to where we are as a species, one, without the power of collaboration, and we couldn't collaborate without, as the great book Sapiens says, without the ability to tell stories about each other and gossip.
Yeah, that is interesting. That gossip, you kind of almost wonder sometimes, is that a useful tool? And it is, because you're informing your community and you're learning about other people and who to stay away from and who to cling to and all these other things that you can learn through people just whispering and talking about each other. You do have to be careful, though, because it gets deceitful and conniving, and there's obviously self-interest in mistreating people or abusing relationships or manipulating others. So you do have to be aware of that.
Yeah, it's when insecurities flare up. Another great book, Body Keeps a Score, just talks about, we all face traumas growing up. It's like a sine wave, some lesser, some more, but everyone faces insecurities when they're younger that we carry with us for the rest of our lives. I always say we're born pretty perfect. The world messes us up for about 5 to 20 years, then we spend the rest of our lives overcoming those things that messed us up. and generally those things
are a good way to look at it.
Yeah, our things are insecurities, and so very rarely, if ever, is someone doing something to you. They're just being who they are. They're battling for resources, and as they're battling for resources, because again, human beings are exceptionally predictable. We're always going to act in our own best interests in terms of safety, security, and prosperity from our own optic. All you have to do is figure out what the other person thinks that is from their perspective, which is deep, active empathy, and you'll understand what they're going to do. And then if you now provide resources in terms of them being successful and you have trust, you're going to have a great relationship. Again, the greatest advice I could have given my 20-year-old self that I know now that I didn't know then is, instead of trying to make myself look good all the time and me, was what can I do to make everyone's life around me just a little bit easier, a little bit better? Because when you have that outward focus, who doesn't want to be inspired to reciprocate that? Again, when you do so without an agenda or without an ask, that's when you had those deep relationships. And you get that, as Jocko Willink and Leif Babin talk about in Extreme Ownership and Dichotomy of Leadership, you talk about trust credits. Your reservoir is full. So if you one day have a big ask, of course, there's never even a second guess on it. And so that's how we do these things. And it's why it's so important.
I think that a lot of people probably do have connections. I don't think it's a lack of connections. People are interacting with others all the time, whether it's their kids or their spouse, a neighbor, community member, somebody who works at down the office from them, or a cousin or a grandfather. Like, we're interacting with people all the time. But what I found to be the biggest challenge for a lot of people is not that they're not interacting, but they're not doing it by design. They just kind of fall into these default relationships. Whether they serve them or not is completely irrelevant in a lot of people's minds. It's like, what do you mean? I have my friend Joe and I have Bill who works down the office from me. Those are my friends. But are they really helpful? And are those the kind of friends that want to help you and move all of you guys in the right direction?
It's a great point. A lot of times, and it's not I don't mean it in a way that anyone's degrading anyone by this thought process, because no one's consciously thinking these things, but we are really, when we're engaging the world, we have lots of contacts, we have lots of associates in order to fix our things that we're working on in life. But a lot of times what we're doing is we're regarding people as a tool. Screwdriver, wrench, I need a certain wrench to do this, I need a certain screwdriver to do this. And so, but it's less personal because we're missing an element of understanding them at a deeper level. And if you take like an extra 30 seconds to pay attention to, or not even 30 seconds most of the time, even less, to pay attention to this key facet. I have these things called the keys of communication. There's one that is really critical in this instance is discovering and understanding the challenges, priorities, pain points, and friction points of those around you. So a lot of times, think about this. Think about those people that you actually are associated with in your life, that you have connections with, that you interact with, that are problem solvers at the surface level, maybe even a little bit deeper. And likewise, you are for them. They'll call on you to solve these things. How many of those supposed associates and connections do you actually understand at a deeper level, slightly below the surface, what those challenges, priority points, and friction points are in their lives? Have you taken time to really, because people leak it all the time. It's called leakage. Leakage comes out the mouth. A lot of times we blow by that leakage when someone's sharing what's going on in their lives. What kind of challenge you're dealing with today? What happened last night? Just anything like that. When you pay attention to those things, you're demonstrating a few things. You're being deeply present for them, and you're hearing their words without trying to respond with your own narrative of what's going on in your life. So you can really, really pay attention, because then when you hear those things that are going on in your life, it gives you the greatest opportunity ever. What, I use that word what, not why, but what, because it makes us be very specific. What specifically can you do if it ever comes up again, that you can be a proactive resource in their lives to help them overcome those things? And even if not something they're overcoming, a challenge or something, the next time you get together with them, will you do the most important thing when you start the next conversation is ask them about what they shared last time first. I do this at the gym every day. So I swim every morning. It's part of what I do for mental health is movement, and I swim every morning. I have very loose associations in the pool, yet I know one of the guys I swim with in there, I know his first name, I know he's a university professor here, I know the subjects he teaches, I know he's got 4 kids, and one of his kids he teaches himself in college. I know at a deeper level, and this is someone I literally interact with for 30 seconds before I start my laps and as he's starting his.
Yeah, it's powerful when you're intentional about it. I'm curious why you use the term alliance, because the book is called Unbreakable Alliances. And, we hear network or we hear band of brothers or we hear other terms. But why did you choose to use the word alliance?
Alliance it just gives this connotation and feeling of allies. Allies are with you side by side. And it's a balanced equation to me. When you say an ally, allies are balanced. For me, if you were going to have healthy things in life, everything, Ben, I keep referring to, I know a few times now, to Jocko Willink and Leif Babin. I love dichotomy of leadership so much because it really highlighted to me that everything in life is really a dichotomy. Because dichotomy, we can't experience really great moments unless we've had really crappy ones, because otherwise it's just a moment. We can't experience success unless we've experienced failure. We can't experience a great moment with our children unless we've had some challenging moments with our children. It gives us a sense of value. And so in order to have a healthy outlook on life, everything must be in balance. Relationships must be in balance. If someone is giving more than the other is giving, that's going to be a relationship out of balance. And we measure that imbalance by negative emotions, resentment, anger, all those negative emotions come up, show there's something out of balance. And so for me, the word ally is indicative of a balanced relationship where everyone is there for each other, willing to be a proactive resource for each other. And now granted, it might never come to be. There might be a lopsided relationship where someone's giving because of their title, their position, their resources they have. But as long as the other person demonstrates the most important thing in the world ever, is that they value that, and they just respond with deep gratitude. Matter of fact, I try, if I haven't done it with you yet, Ryan, I probably will after this. I always respond to all my emails with my deepest gratitude, because no one has to do anything for you. So when you demonstrate that deep gratitude, and you demonstrate how you value and recognize the effort they're taking, that in a large way is reciprocity and demonstrating there is a balance there, because it's recognized that it's out of balance.
Yeah. Well, and finding those people who are willing to reciprocate, right? Because not everybody is. And even if they are, they may not reciprocate in a way that you appreciate. You know, I think about, for example, in romantic relationships, the 5 love languages.
Right.
If I'm a physical affection person and I'm with somebody who is not, and they're not interested in that side of the relationship or expressing love that way, that's not really a relationship I'm interested in being in, because now my needs aren't being met. But what I have found is that a lot of people get jaded because they take the advice of what you're saying, where it's give, add value, improve people's lives, and then they have one relationship or a handful of relationships that don't reciprocate, and so they think all relationships are like that. For me, it's been a matter of playing the law of large numbers. I'm willing to reciprocate, knowing that a percentage of people never will in return. Or excuse me, I'm willing to add value to a relationship, knowing a percentage of people will not reciprocate, because I know the people who do will more than make up for the investment and energy of my time and attention.
Yeah, and I mean, you put a great points there too, because some people are going to be energy vampires and they're just going to suck it all right out of you, and which it's really funny. It's really fine though, and what I mean by that is, some people just have more to give. Some people have a great reservoir of energy to give others, and it doesn't bother them whatsoever. But someone else's can be a lot lower, and so they might sit in judgment and say, hey, you're giving too much to this person. But maybe not to me, because as long as it doesn't start flaring up the negative emotions, it's okay. Because what happens is, when the negative emotions start creeping in, that means the relationship's turning unhealthy. And when it comes to, and you gave a great example of the love languages, if you happen to be someone who needs physical affection and the other person doesn't, part of this, I don't want to give the impression that this is all about mushy-gushy, encounters and avoidance. It's not. This is about very pragmatic discussions and communication. Because if someone's not giving you what your needs are, and it's starting to unbalance that equation, communicate it. Say, listen, here's, I recognize X, Y, and Z. I've done all I could to do this. Please let me know. It's my fault if I'm not providing for you the things that you need. I'm curious. Are you interested in what I'm interested in and what I need to get out of a relationship? Again, you're not making it about yourself. You're asking them their opinion, because we have these 4 golden keys to communication to make sure that when we're communicating the things and ideas that we want to, we need to keep the focus on them. It's a very big challenge that a lot of us has because of our ego. But if you do this when you're communicating, 1, you seek the thoughts and opinions of others instead of sharing your own. And in this case, instead of telling them, here's what my needs are, you can ask them a question. Are you curious about what my needs are? And then the second is talk in terms of their challenges, priorities, and pain points instead of pontificating about yours. 3, this is the big one, non-judgmental active curiosity. The big word there being non-judgmental. If someone is sharing thoughts, ideas, concerns that are important to them, the worst thing you do in the world for building an ally, or at least having a productive conversation, is to shut them down. Granted, doesn't mean you have to agree with them. It means you're seeking to understand their context. Because believe it or not, I mean, everyone ask yourself this rhetorical question right now. Do a thought experiment. Ask yourself, everything that you think and you tell the world and share with the world, whether it be in writing, email, or just a great conversation, you've probably given it a lot of thought, correct?
Sure.
So give someone else the same respect. If it's coming out of their mouth, they probably gave it a lot of thought. And if you shut down what they're thinking, good luck on ever having more of a conversation. Doesn't mean you agree. It means seek to understand how they came up with that, where are they taking information from. Robert Greene's great book, Laws of Human Nature, says that as human beings, we constantly consume information that validates our own self-opinion. Nelson Mandela wrote in 1963 as he's still locked in prison and he's just getting out that and talk about media even back in 1963. That's why we remove it by time. It's great. He goes, the news media exists to provide information that only services their clients.
Of course.
So we consume information that validates our own self-opinion. So, and then the final thing of the 4 is to be empowering of choice. Give people choices, because when you're doing any of these 4 things, the entire shift goes from you to them. And it's about, you can still package what it is you want to have said, what you want to do, but you can shift the focus from what you want to ask them what they think about what you want. See, just a little shift. Piece of cake.
Yeah. Oh, it's easy. It's easy. Everybody should have this down and listen to this hour-long podcast, and you'll be a master in communication and building alliances.
All you need is reps.
That's right. Well, I am glad too, though, that you said that where you're talking about that we seek information to validate our own opinion, because as you were saying about listening to other people's ideas, in my mind immediately, I was like, well, some people are dumb and some ideas are dumb. But that might be validated through my own lens and my own filter of information that I'm looking at that, especially when we're in a political climate like we are right now.
Yeah.
But the reality is some people are dumb and some ideas are dumb, and we ought to bring those things to light so we can expose them for the lunacy that they are.
It would be good, wouldn't it? But
oh my goodness.
Those people themselves will never see what they're saying as lunacy.
Well, they don't know they're dumb. And I might be one of those guys. I don't know.
It's, that's why I love reading history. So my parents will always say to me, oh, what's going to happen next week during the election? Oh my God. I said, nothing. I said, what do you mean nothing? What if so-and-so gets elected? I said, doesn't matter. I mean, it matters. You might think it matters, but when you take an historical context, I read a lot of historical history. Remember, I just got done reading Sir Francis Drake and Queen Elizabeth and the building of an empire, 1500s, right? England, and James Cook sailing, circumnavigating the world 3 times. And you look at the evolution of our societies, and you look at the politics, and you look at even our own country. You look at the time period of Civil War. I read Ulysses S. Grant's biography, and then Stonewall Jackson's biography, and then Empire of the Rising Sun, which is all about the Comanche at the same time period. You keep looking through history, and I guarantee you there are much, much worse times in history, and they survived it too. So I'm a big believer in whatever system comes to be, you can hope for it to be the one that you want, but regardless, you will survive it. I guarantee it.
I'm going to push back on that a little bit because I am hesitant when we take that mentality, because I think the benefit of taking that mentality is it keeps the control in your own purview. It's like, I'm going to focus on the things I can control. But also there are pivotal moments throughout history. I think of, for example, Julius Caesar crossing the Rubicon and starting the Roman Civil War. Right, it's like, okay, that was a very political military action that changed the tide of millions of people over the course of history. So I think there are pivotal moments. How do you find the balance of focusing on what you can control, but also being informed and being educated and impacting culture in a positive way, et cetera?
That is also another great point. And you're right, 100%. That mentality I have keeps me staying positive, because the most important thing, if you're going to solve problems, you have to stay positive. You have to have humility, you have to stay positive, and you have to take action. At the same time, I have that mentality so I don't sit here in stress and fret what any outcome will be. I also have a very preferred outcome, because I see definite actions. If someone's elected, and I'm a behaviorist, I stay neutral as best I can.
Sure, yeah. It's just behavior at this point. It's like looking under the hood of a car, and yeah.
But at the same time, though, I see potential chaos erupting if one wins over another. There's no doubt. It's not like I think, hey, it'll be all perfect no matter what. No, I think there's huge implications for who will come about. There's no doubt in my mind. I take a larger perspective in moments when the outcome doesn't go the way I think is prudent for nation states, because, and I'll say nation states because nation states are affected hugely by types of elections like this. And so when you can't I do this with my kids all the time. If you gave it your all, you threw everything you had on the table, and whatever outcome happens, it happens. And then from that point on, you have to work with whatever system is presented you for the safety, security, and prosperity for yourself and those you care about. And so I take that larger view of doing all I can, throwing my cards on the table, throwing all the effort on the table to do what I think will be in the best interest of humanity and preventing chaos. At the same time, though, in order to stay positive and problem solve whatever faces me and those people in my life, my circle of influence, that's how I maintain positivity, knowing that no matter what happens, we as a species will survive. Nation states is interesting. I actually looked this up too, because I was always curious about this. Countries and nation states can survive longer periods of time, much longer periods of time than the actual forms of government do. Those are the things that have been in flux over time more than anything.
Yeah.
So maintaining that. I mean, just think about, you mentioned Julius Caesar and Roman Empire. Roman Empire lasted a long time. The forms of government shifted a lot throughout that time period.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's hard for people to acknowledge and recognize that our form of government or our way of life may change it will change over time too. It's just a matter of when and how, not if that will happen. Speaking of the politics conversation, are there conversations that should be off limits, or you should at least to some degree be aware of how you approach those things? You know, obviously the perfect examples are politics, religion, very polarizing issues. And secondary to that, when and how do you start bringing that into the relationships that you have, whether it's platonic or romantic or professional?
Yeah, it's a touchy area. There is no doubt. The way I first of all, when it comes to politics, religion, all these things, I tend to view them as a small part of the whole of the individual I'm talking to, because I don't want to. Me personally, I will not ruin a healthy relationship with someone because of a small part of how they're thinking. And I do this because literally this small part. I mean, so what someone politically thinks really has manifested itself in the last couple of years, really, because before this, no one was literally thinking nearly as much about this, right? So you take this last little thing right here, put that aside, if it's positive or negative, and I will always try to focus on all these other things over here first. And then the other thing I'm assessing too about the types of conversations I can have with someone is I'm going into, is someone emotional about this or are they pragmatic about it? Because the emotional brain, which media feeds into the emotional brain, because when people have an emotional response to something, they're going to tune in, because when they tune in, it's going to validate their own self-emotional opinion, which sells ad space. You sell ad space, they get more money. So I literally, when you understand the matrix behind the code behind the matrix, you can sit here and really think about, how do I need to engage with someone else? And so what I'm doing is I'm assessing, is this person emotionally attached to how they're thinking about this, the political challenge or religion or anything else, or are they pragmatically thinking about it? And emotional, it's easy. You'll see high emotions, anger, or a flare-up, a quick response rapidly, instead of taking a couple seconds to really think about what it is you said. Think about it and then come back and ask you a question. In other words, if someone starts telling me what they think, I'm most likely dealing with someone more emotional, and I'm going to back away from the topic. If someone starts asking me more about what I think, and their verbals are congruent with their nonverbals, they're saying they're genuinely curious, then that's someone I can start touching, a little bit closer, a little bit deeper on the conversation side. So I'm very cautious on not engaging someone who's emotionally engaged in one of these topics.
Well, I think that's a good point. If the emotion is there, the likelihood of it being a productive conversation is significantly lessened.
Yeah, ain't gonna happen.
For sure.
Yeah,
but as a behavioral analyst, can't you look at somebody's perspective on, let's say, politics, for example, since we're on that vein, and make some assessments with some accuracy about the way that they view their life? Of course, not everything, but I would say that there are opinions and perspectives that people have regarding politics where you could make some other assumptions and be right 90% of the time.
Yeah, so I call these behavior arcs. And so a lot of times when you get data points with every human being in their behavior give us data points on their behavior arcs, as I call life arcs. And as you start taking in these data points, and that happens through the language they use, the way they're interacting. And one of the easiest data points to kind of take in to assess is someone a wound collector, and and do they have a victim mentality, or are they problem solvers? That is the
you
first
said
one.
wound collector. Is that what you said?
Yeah, wound collector.
I'd never heard that. I mean, I know I can make some assumptions about what it means, but I'd never heard that term. That's interesting.
Yeah, wound collectors, Joe Navarro talks about it in his book, Dangerous Personalities, a good friend of mine. And what wound collectors are, they're the type of people in your life, when something happens, they don't take it as just the way the universe is interacting with you around you. I mean, you're a hunter. You can't control anything that happens. In other words, if you're on a hunt and something doesn't go your way, the animal doesn't cross your path, it doesn't come in, to your line of fire, whatever the situation is, you don't say to yourself, damn animal, they suck. It's the animal.
I do say that, actually.
But
I don't blame the animal. I don't. Yeah, right.
Right. It just is what it is. Wound collect. Someone who's a problem solver says, "I did something wrong. I need to change my location. I need to be more downwind than upwind. Whatever the situation is, that
make
okay,
adjustments.
The situation didn't work out. I'm going to own it. Again, going back to extreme ownership, I'm going to own my behavior on this one." Instead of placing the blame somewhere else. People that tend to be blame placers are wound collectors. They see themselves as victims. A victim mentality is not a type of individual who typically solves problems effectively and pragmatically. And so those are just, again, and that doesn't even, I don't want to place political labels on one side or the other on it, but in general, it's a swath. If someone is a wound collector or has a victim mentality in one area of their life, they're going to manifest it in a lot of other areas of their lives. Yeah, I'm going to avoid it.
Well, and those wound collectors, they exist on both sides of the political spectrum. Let's not pretend they don't, because I know plenty of liberals who, liberal tears is what you hear. But then I hear lots of conservatives who are like, "Oh, well, I'm logical." It's like you're the furthest from being logical right now. You're fanatical and you're being overly emotional about your beliefs and your dogma.
It's blame placers. Anyone who's placing blame on someone else for the situation is not someone who owns it. Because we'll just relate it to great leadership. Great leaders don't place blame. Great leaders solve problems. That's the only thing I'm looking for. Matter of fact, we get door knockers coming to my neighborhood all the time. We had a challenge in my neighborhood with a business that was moving in that was not good for kids. This was, I'm not going to say what business it was, but it was a business that was like a block from our house, like half a mile or a quarter mile from our elementary school. That was not good for our community. And here's our politician knocking on my front door looking for my vote. And my only response was, "What specifically are you doing about this problem?" Blah, 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 blah. "Well, it's the state problem. It's this." I said, "I don't want to hear whose problem it is. I want to know what you are doing about it. Fix it. If you can't tell me what specifically you're going to do, who you're going to call, and what you're going to do to remedy this problem, you don't have my vote." Because leaders solve problems. They have a plan. They don't place the blame anywhere else. And so when I'm assessing, I don't care who your politics are. I just want leaders who solve problems, because leaders do simple things. They accomplish objectives. They create a safe environment for people to innovate, and they're resources for other people's success without expectation or reciprocity. That's it. They're positive, they solve problems, and they're safe. Boom. Do that.
I like that. That's a really good framework. They're positive, they solve problems, and they're safe. That safe one is the one I think a lot of people overlook. I have in my life, where I'm emotionally volatile and I may react rather than respond, and then people don't feel comfortable coming to me with issues and concerns because they don't know which version of me they're going to get.
Yeah, Ryan, you just hit a beautiful thing there. So the behaviors of trust, because you don't accomplish anything in life. You don't build allies, and we don't innovate through problems unless people feel safe. Because our genetics, biology, and evolution says that, again, we are predictable because we're always going to act in our own best interest. As I said, safety, security, and prosperity for ourselves and those we care about in our lives. Some people's circle is slow. Some people's circle is they're very, very pragmatic. I mean, they're very entrepreneurial, and they spread that goodness out as far as they can. But the bedrock of everything is ask yourself, what can you do to inspire someone to feel safe with you? Because no one is going to take an action with you. No one is going to listen to what it is you have to say. No one's going to lie with you unless they feel safe with you. And the behaviors of safety are really simple. Open, honest communication, transparency, and vulnerability. That's it. And so whatever political spectrum you fall on, assess the people that you're voting for and ask yourself, how open and honest are their communication? Are they? How transparent are they? And how vulnerable are they? And are they solving problems or are they blame placers? And you're going to see some problems on both sides. But then when you but if you start adding up the scores, then you can make your own assessment about what it is you want to do.
So can I put you on the spot with something here? With your background, I think you might have some insight for us on this. Would you be willing to give us some, from your perspective, I'm assuming you don't know Kamala Harris or Donald Trump personally,
right?
But would you be willing to give us some examples of redeeming qualities in each and some qualities that you would consider character defects?
I'll start with the character defects of both first. They're both blame placers. Kamala Harris can't get over saying how everything that's going wrong in the administration and world in the country is all Donald Trump's fault, and Donald Trump can't get over of calling her the stupidest person ever running for office, and that Hillary Clinton was much dumber, even though crooked Hillary. So they're very good at calling each other dumb and placing the blame on each other. So redeeming qualities of both. Donald Trump has been, especially in the last couple of weeks, bringing a lot of positive energy. So negative quality of Donald Trump is when he's faced with someone that is attacking him, he leans in and attacks back, but it's a very ugly face for him because he then gets name cally and he gets like that. But when he faces someone that's very positive, it's a great effect on him. Same thing. Her redeeming qualities would be if she would get, when she's not on script, and can be genuine and organic about what she keeps mentioning her values and that these are her values. Well, when she can stay on her values and not listen to a script given to her, she is very on point and very good because think about this. Everyone has great values. Everyone's looking to do the right thing for the country. And so when you just take that as the bedrock, that's helpful. And so I think that's very redeeming when she can stay on who she is rather than listen to someone else. And so it is a very redeeming quality. I think she's got probably very good interpersonal skills with individuals one-on-one more than in the group mentality because it just gets derailed sometimes. And so they both have both sides of the coin going, I think.
Yeah. I think you could make that argument for both because I think Trump is better one-on-one than he is in large places as well. And I think one thing that Trump has done well, and this is a pivot based on what you said that I've seen in the past, where he takes criticism or opportunities and he makes light of them, makes fun of it in a positive way, I would say, and also just has an enjoyable time with it. You think about him in the garbage truck and he wore his orange vest for the entire thing. To me, he took what he normally would have been combative with and flipped it around and made it a positive, funny, lighthearted moment where he even used self-deprecating humor, calling himself fat and old. It was a little bit more endearing than you've seen in the past from him.
Yeah, more Ronald Reagan-esque with the self-deprecating humor. And so, so what I assess with both of them and any individual is let go of what media shows you on both, because all media is going to slant it to what their audience wants, right? Look at how they interact with the people in their lives closest to them. So you look at both candidates. And looking at the DNC and watching the RNC conventions, just look at Kamala Harris and how she interacted with her husband and her closest staff. And then you can really assess a lot because those are the people that know these people best, and you're going to see the reactions they have towards them. And so then when you looked at the RNC and how Donald Trump had his grandchildren, his littlest grandchild sitting on his lap, not by him putting them there, but by them wanting to be there. And then Kamala Harris with her husband. So you can really assess how someone is really as a human being by those closest to them, unscripted, uncommercialized, just those moments. And so those are what I'm always looking for, those granular moments of the real person underneath the media facade, because will always be the best indicator of anything.
Sometimes that can be a challenge because, to your point, it is so scripted. It is broadcast. It's a performance. I mean, let's be honest. Kamala Harris, she's performing. Donald Trump is performing. And that's what they do. And they're trying to communicate a persona that they think their customer or their audience wants, to your point earlier.
Unfortunately, anytime we want to assess behavior, it's best to always try to get as much data points and ground truth on anyone before the current event happens. And so as soon as it's challenging with Donald Trump because most of the books he wrote for his own fame and glory at any point in his life. There's not an objective biography out there on him of his life story that I've found. I've looked. Same thing, Kamala Harris. I've tried hard. Everything that's been written about her has been since she got into politics. So that's also a very hard one to do. So Barack Obama, I've read his biography. Same thing. It's post political life and so you always got to take it for a grain of salt. I'm telling you, the best book to assess a human being right now out there for any of these politicians, J.D. Vance, Hillbilly Elegy. You will get a great sense. Now, this is not a positive or negative. If you want a sense of an understanding of his life arc, of who he is and where he comes from, read his book. The movie was decent. It was pretty close to the book, but read his book because that book was written just as he got out of Yale University and just before he went into business. So that is the core data points on his life arc and who he is. And so here's where it's also really good too, where you can just sit and assess. So you read the ground truth of any politician or any human being, and you will get your own ground knowledge of these individuals. And then when you hear other people talking about them, you're going to be able to assess, are they pontificating from a talking point, or are they actually talking because they know the individual and did their deeper research? And so when you read source material, again, I'm an intelligence officer. This is what we did. We didn't listen to what was written in the newspaper, although it gives you places to inform. You went to ground truth, always looking for ground truth, because ground truth will be your best guide. And so anytime someone comes into politics, anytime someone's coming into any position anywhere, I'm looking for the best ground truth I can. As soon as he announced J.D. Vance, I hadn't heard of J.D. Vance. First thing I did was I went to Amazon and I said, what books have we got out there? And then I did the same thing with Harris and what's his face? Waltz, same thing. I'm looking for ground truth because ground truth will be my assessment of not just them as individuals, but the people talking about them, so I can assess them as well.
It is interesting with the J.D. Vance phenomenon, and then I want to get away from politics and to real practical application
I've never talked
here.
as much about it, so I hope we're not turning everyone off.
No, I think it's important. I think we're giving a fair and accurate critique. That's what I want. Just somebody to maybe give us their insight, their professional insight. But one thing that was interesting with J.D. Vance is you can also, to me, look at the timeline. So when J.D. wrote Hillbilly Elegy, it was a wildly successful New York Times bestselling book. It obviously was put in theaters. And it was received broadly very, very well.
Ron Howard produced it.
It was okay. I didn't know who it was. So, I mean, you're talking about a huge cultural phenomenon here from that book and that story. And then he is announced as Trump's running mate, and all of a sudden he's a horrible, no good piece of garbage. And so that to me is a representation of is him being a horrible person really accurate when it just flipped just because they are now sitting on the opposite side of your political aisle. Yeah.
I think people, when you see a flip happen like that, the people that do the flip, it's hard for them to maintain credibility of what they think and what they're sharing because they're not being intellectually honest. I mean, because you can't think such positive things about someone on one day and then the next day completely flip everything, even though no data points have changed whatsoever.
Right. So how do you take this ability for ground information, let's say, really getting to know people behind who they're trying to put out as their persona? How do you do that quickly? Because there's environments, whether you're on a date for the first time or you're looking to hire a potential employee, you've got to get to that quickly. Mm-hmm. What are some points and some things that we can do to really find out who a person is very fast?
So I'm going to go to gut feeling here. And I'm going to define what gut feeling is because gut feeling, when you actually can make it a little more pragmatic, can be, I think, one of your best guides. Some people say I'm just really good at reading people or I'm really good at assessing someone really rapidly. No, you don't have some super spidey senses or skill set. What you're doing is you're able to rapidly be very present in observation, an observationist. Because what we're seeing is what I'm always looking for is I'm looking for congruency. I'm looking for a congruency of the words coming out of their mouth, their word choice of what they're doing, and the congruency of their body language along with it. And so here's a great example. If someone is using all the words of the keys of communication where they're making it all about me, which is what we're really assessing, is this person too self-centered or are they centered on me? So where's that balance at? I'm looking for a balance here. They can talk about themselves a bit, but I want to hear things where they're curious about me as well. And if it's all about me, that's even better. If it's all about me, in other words, are they a me former rather than an informer? That's telling me a lot. And if what I'm looking for, I'm looking for the nonverbal congruence. And so if someone is actually making the conversation about me by seeking my thoughts and opinions, talking about me non-judgmentally, validating me, giving me choices, that's fantastic. What I should see with that non-verbally is open, honest communication, eyebrow elevation, smiling, high comfort displays. In other words, if someone is really all about me, they're going to be excited and uplifted about sharing these things about me, about asking me about me, being curious. In other words, Ryan, you tell me about the hunting trip you went on with your son. I should be doing this. Oh my gosh, Ryan, that was really pretty amazing. What do you think will be the next thing you guys do? What was the greatest takeaway? What did zebra taste like? So all these moments. So this is congruence as opposed to, really? Ryan, tell me more about that hunting trip.
Right.
See what I mean? So is he really curious or what's going on in his mind? The other thing I'm looking for too is someone pushing the tempo. People that are all about me are going to accommodate my tempo. Human beings, we have a tempo of speech, we have a tempo of interaction, we have a tempo of how quickly or slowly we give trust, how open we are or not open. If someone tries to push my tempo, well, then it's about them. It's not about me. So those are what I'm looking for right away. I'm looking for a lot of congruence. I'm looking for how revealing they are, how open, how transparent they are. If I'm asking a question, because if something comes out of their mouth, like one of the questions I love is like, what was that spark and inspiration, Ryan, all those years ago to be who you are today? I should have some open data points right away about, hey, well, I grew up here, I did this, I got into hunting with my parents and my dad here, I shared it with my son here. I should get these data points. Now, if I then do a quick, hey, what was it like this? I'm so sorry, tell me more about what it was like when you did this. What I should have is that on that same tempo, the same level of transparency and openness and vulnerability. Vulnerability mean, hey, here's when things went a little sideways and I did my best to mitigate it. Very much like we were talking about with the self-deprecating humor. Only people who are self-secure in themselves will do that. And so I should have that same tempo of everything with the transparency I'm seeking based off of what you already shared. Now, if someone actually starts shutting down, if I say, hey, tell me a little bit more about this if you're comfortable with it. If I go, yeah, well, nah, now we start getting a little incongruence and makes me a little, it gives me a red flag. Red flags are smoke. We might not have fire, but red flags start giving smoke. If you got 2 red flags and 3, that's when I just start distancing. I don't say I shut you down. I don't say that you're a bad person or anything. I just say we have someone who's not willing to have a healthy relationship with me in this lane. I need to back off a little bit here because there's something going on here, and I don't want to guess at what it is, but it's not going to be good.
I really like the idea of congruency in your words and your behavior. I remember this was years and years ago, more than a decade ago, and I had somebody that I was working with. I was in financial planning, and this person was in the financial business as well. And they said, hey, I want to introduce you to the gentleman who runs our organization. I said, great, let's do that. So he introduced me to him, and I sat down, and the gentleman said all the right things. He was very curious, very interested, asking the right questions, seemed like very genuine. But then he started taking notes. And so he had this notepad out, and he would ask me, he's like, so where are you from? And he would write it down. And he's like, how many kids do you have? And then he would write it down. And I'm like, what? Finally, I was like, what are you doing? He's like, oh, I'm just taking notes. And I said, why? I thought we were just having a conversation. He's like, oh, it just helps me to remember. That was an incongruency and inconsistency in my mind that this person just does not care about me genuinely. They're trying to game or manipulate or write it down so they could use it at some future point. It was very hard for me to wrap my head around it. I ended up not liking this guy in large part because of that.
It's interesting too. During all our training, even for FBI agents, the last thing you want to do is take notes during an interview. Because 1, it's very distracting. 2, you're showing exactly what you do. And also, everyone should do this. Try this on your own if you're watching and listening to this. If you have nothing to say, you will remember everything the other person says. when we're having a conversation with someone, 99% of the time is as they're sharing a thought, opinion, idea, or an anecdote of what they've done in their lives, our brain is automatically coming up with a way to make a connection. We have our own anecdote, our own story, things that, and now our brain is now focused on what it is we want to say and not what on they're saying. And so we are waiting for a pause so we can interrupt or interject our own thoughts and opinions. And when we're thinking about what it is we want to say, we're not remembering what it is Ryan's saying. So for yourself, try it. The first time you do this, I guarantee it's going to be the weirdest feeling in your own brain that you'll ever have, but the rewards you're going to be profoundly impacted by. The next conversation you have with someone, they're sharing an anecdote or story. I mean, do this. Think about, because this will come out after, Halloween was yesterday as of this recording. This will come out later. Ask yourself, ask someone, say, hey, so what did you do with your kids on Halloween? If someone has kids, or what did your kids dress up as, right? As they're sharing that story, you're probably going to have something jumping in your mind. Flush it, pay attention, and then follow up with, what do you think inspired them to pick that? I guarantee you, if you have those two things, what was a spark and inspiration for them to choose that outfit? You didn't have a way you wanted to reciprocate with a story about your own kids or something. I guarantee you're going to remember that story about that person's kids and what they dress up as and why for a very long time.
You know what's so fascinating to me? Yeah, right, yeah. What's so fascinating to me about the power of asking questions is that let me say it this way. I think a lot of people are trying to posture and position for credibility, authority, influence with other people. And so they think if I make this about me and show off my credentials and talk about how wonderful I am, then I'm on this pedestal. I found the exact opposite to be true. The more interested I am in a person and the better, more poignant questions I ask, the more credibility or influence that person is willing to lend me. But it's completely opposite of what most people think and do.
100%. Ryan, you've done podcasting a long time now. I look back, what was it, 2020? It was our first conversation. I mean, it's been a minute. I mean, you've been doing this a while.
2020, I started in 2015, so it's been a long time.
Yeah, so tell me, there's no better compliment you get in the world than when someone says, oh my gosh, no one's ever asked me that before.
I love that.
And that person and you remembers that moment for a very long time and the answer given. And so that's what makes the greatest impact with each other, with human beings, is when someone, and those moments only happen when you're deeply present for the other person. It's the greatest, I talk about this all the time, it is the greatest gift you can give another human being is to be present for them. No agenda, just there for them, because that is building more credibility than anything else in the world with that individual. That person, I mean, think about it. That person who you had that response from, you could have an ask from them 15 years later and be like, yeah, Ryan, anything you want. I mean, seriously, Ryan, again, 2020 is our last conversation. When this book was coming out and my publicist comes to me and says, hey, do you have a list of people whose show you want to get back to? You were the very first one at the very top. I want to go back on his show, man. He's a great guy. Why?
I appreciate that.
Great conversation because you made it about me.
With your work as in the FBI, behavioral analyst, what exactly was the work that you were doing? I mean, when you're talking about analyzing people's behaviors and their patterns, are these potential criminals, suspects, people in the FBI itself that you're trying to train? Like, what is it that you were doing there?
I was strategizing trust. That's the baseline, easy and quick answer. I was strategizing trust. Trust between who? So I worked in the world of counterintelligence, and my job was recruiting spies. For most of my career, I was recruiting Russian military intelligence officers, GRU officers from Russia. I mean, my job against most of my career was Russians. And boy, I tell you.
That's interesting.
We've owned them for a long time. No matter what anyone in the media has ever said in the last bunch of years, they were doing nothing new than they've always done before. They've improved, technology's improved, but they've always used active measures against the U.S. And I've said this a long time. I've said this from the very beginning. Russians don't take sides. They hate us all. Their number one goal and objective is to sow distrust in our organizations and institutions between us and the American people. That's it. That's what they were successful at. That was 100% all they want to do. There's no taking a side. The most ludicrous thing I ever heard was, oh, they want Hillary to win. They want Trump to win. No, they don't. They don't care. They want us all to fail. that is the most important thing for people to remember. And you know how I know? They've told me. I've recruited Russian defectors at the highest levels, and we know exactly what their game plan is. We know exactly, but also that's nothing new. We've known this for a very long time. So that's the first thing. So what my team did was very simple. We were strategizing recruitment operations as the highest level, and then we're strategizing interview operations, double agent operations, false flags, all the hooky spooky spy stuff. And we came in and we'd look at the human being that my case agents need to have a human interaction with, whether it was to offer them an opportunity to be a resource to the United States government and do what I call the toughest sales job in the world, selling American patriotism to a Russian spy. Who the hell wants to buy that? Every now and then you do have someone who wants to buy that. So we're strategizing these human engagements. Believe it or not, half the time when I was going in and helping a case agent assess how to have a great conversation and offer a resource that can solve a challenge, priority, or pain point in a potential spy's life, and then trust them with their lives, that's what we do every day in life. Can we be a resource to someone else, and can they trust us with their life? And I was then strategizing, how do you inspire management, that these case agents' bosses, to say yes to the operation? Because if they don't get yes, they're not going to do it. And so how can you inspire a boss to say yes? They have to feel safe that this operation I'm proposing a case agent doing, it's not going to kill their career. I was strategizing trust non-stop, inside, outside, upside down, because pitching an intelligence officer to cooperate with the United States government is the last hurdle you face when doing this. The first and biggest hurdles is the approval to do it.
Yeah, and there's a lot of moving parts, I imagine, and a lot of self-interest that you need to make sure are aligned.
Yeah, and the greatest challenge there is to not judge the decision process of the bosses. In other words, if people were careerists and they're afraid to say yes to an operation because they're a careerist, they didn't want to hurt their operation, I can't judge that, because that's going to hinder me trying to do this. Again, I going back to Leif Babin and Jocko Willink and dichotomy of leadership, Leif would come back with these. Leif was the platoon commander. Jocko was the detachment commander over in Ramadi, I think it was. And they're doing this operation, and they put in the proposal to get the operation done. High-end operation. They're going to high speed, low drag, going to go in, kill the bad guys, get the good guys out. And they put in their proposal, and it got shot down by higher command. And Leif is like bitching, he's moaning, he's complaining, how come blah, 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 blah. And all Jocko did was, hey, shut up, man. It's your fault. Because what do you mean it's your fault? He says, you did not provide enough information for the boss to feel safe with saying yes. What can you do? Don't judge what they want to feel safe with. That's not your concern. Your concern is get the operation done. Your job is the mission. You failed to make them feel safe with what it is you want to do. So give them what they want so they will say yes to doing the righteous work. That is called a problem solver, not a wound collector victim. Victims say, oh, it's their fault. When the bosses don't say yes to me, it's all their fault. No. Own it. What can you do to make them feel safe?
So you're not judging their motives, but you certainly want to discern what those motives are, though, because then it gives you the ammo that you need to propose a solution that will make them feel comfortable enough in saying yes.
Yes, 100%. That was the single hardest thing for me to do in my entire career. I'm a former Marine. All I cared about all the time was mission. Marines, especially at the lower level, I got out of captain. We're not careerists. You are mission. It's all you ever hear about. Mission first, people always. That's all I cared about. My Marines, I cared about the mission. Marines mission. And so it was very challenging for me to come out of that environment and understand that some people are, now granted, they don't think they are, but they are career oriented. You have people that care about that next promotion. If your operation is going to undermine the potential for the next promotion, then they're probably going to say no. I was judging that for a long time. And with me judging it, what started happening? I started saying negative things. I started being a victim. I started complaining. I started whining. Who wants to say yes to that kind of guy?
Yeah, of course. You're undermining trust in the things that you want to build.
Yeah. Again, it goes back to, if I could tell my 20-year-old self something to be more successful, it would have been, what can I do to make my boss's job a little bit easier? What can I do to be a greater resource to the people on my squad? Get off yourself and what it is you want to accomplish. Figure out what other people are trying to do. Be a resource for them. That way, when you have an ask, of course they're going to support you.
It's funny that you said that, because that's what was going through my mind, because we have a lot of men who will ask and say, I have this boss and he's a jerk, or he's not letting me do this and I have no autonomy in my whatever. Fill in your gripe of choice. And the answer is, I think, just what you said. Make him look good. If you make him look good and he knows that whatever you do, it's going to fall on him and he's going to look good, he's not going to say no to that. 100% of the time, he will say yes to that.
And it's so right. And a typical response to that was, well, I'm not going to compromise my values. I'm not going to be a suck ass. Good, don't. Then I can guarantee you're going to get a no.
Yeah.
It's a choice. Then just live with your choice. That if you are the type of person that your ego is so big that you can't stand to make it about someone else other than yourself and what it is you want to do, and communicate in terms of what they need to feel safe, fine. There's no right. See, to me, there's no right or wrong in this. There's just cause and effect. If you do not want to be of value to someone else and allow them to feel safe with you as a partner and you as a team member that's going to accomplish the mission that you want to accomplish, I can guarantee you what's going to happen. They're going to say no. And they're going to repeatedly say no. And then here's what the other negative effect that, see, I never just think of the one round going down range. I'm thinking of collateral damage. So because they now have a negative affect towards you, do you think that's the only person that impacts, is that one person that thinks about this to you?
Yeah.
Everyone they communicate in their circle of influence is now going to have leakage about what this person thinks about you. So your personal brand is now starting to go down the toilet. Not just that, but everyone you now interact with in your social circle that might value you, that you value them, they're now going to have negative leakage on them, a negative halo going. So just because you decided that you're going to stand your ground and not support the bosses, whatever makes them feel them safe, the negative effect, not just on you, but everyone in your own circle, is going to be profound. No right, no wrong. I just can guarantee the results. Make a choice.
This is powerful stuff. I want to be respectful of your time. I know you have a meeting that you got to get to. So tell the guys where to connect with you. The book is called Unbreakable Alliances. It's out today as of the release of this podcast. Yep. Tell the men where they can pick up a copy and learn more about the work you do.
Really simple, man. Just go to robindreeke.com, ROBINDREEKE.com. I call it the site where it's death by Robin. I got my YouTube videos there that you can just get more behavioral training. You can buy the books, obviously. And most importantly, if I can be a resource for you anyway, connect. Just reach out to me. Happy to answer questions. Let me know that you met me on Ryan's show here. It is a great show. And my final plug is, hey, Ryan puts in a hell of a lot of time, energy, and resources into providing you all great content. Hit that like, hit that subscribe, and share it with as many people as you can, because a lot of people need more Ryan in their lives.
Well, I appreciate that. I don't know if that's accurate, but I'd certainly appreciate it, and I'll take it. Rob, it's great to talk with you. Always enjoy our conversations, and I'm looking forward to, hopefully it's not another 3-4 years before you write another book and we have to do this again. Maybe we do something in between.
I'd love to, man. Stay safe, brother.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate you.